So now let's narrow our focus to cities. In an environment which we think we are familiar with, are there any issues that we tend to neglect? Let's invite Dr. Wang from Fudan University to review for us the neglected issues in an urban setting. Thank you very much. The presentations that went before me were in the air and down there in the ocean. We saw changes to our Earth, and we also saw technologies in support of our safeguard against such changes. And let's narrow our focus now from the air, from the ocean, to the land under our feet, the city of Shanghai. It's so small as the size of a garden, the size of a construction site, but it's relevant to us all. And I see a very young audience. This task is exactly what for us young people, what for us young scientists can get in very quickly, and the results can come in very handy. And when we took our view from mountains and oceans where we believe that we lack knowledge, to the land under our feet, somewhere we also lack understanding. An urban ecosystem in which plants, animal intrusion, relationship between animals and human is even less understood than mountains and oceans. So within a short span of time, I'd like to shed some of our light on the ecosystem in an urban setting and approaches of technology to an urban setting, and attempts to use new ways of urban biodiversity methods to address issues in cities. For long, we take cities as a wasteland of biodiversity, but we find that it's the other way around. We find drastic changes to the adaptive capabilities of animals, and as a result, many inexplicable phenomenon takes place in cities. So it's a hotspot of research for biodiversity. It's abstract, but it's not abstract when we come to think of something that occurs to many residential areas. We understand that raccoon dog live in residential blocks in Shanghai. They live in the north of China to the south of China. But in the past 30 years, because of environmental degradation and many other changes, raccoon dogs, this medium-sized canine animal, has retreated to sometimes cities where they find it a shelter and find it a place to explore. So when we take observations of raccoon dogs, we find them to be a different kind of species as compared with those living in the wild. In the wilderness, raccoon dogs are timid, sheepish, but we find raccoon dogs in cities as discreet, explorative, adventurous. Raccoon dogs observe roads, highways, vehicles for hours, and then crawl beneath our feet to take a sniff. And then we find that the changes to these animals in terms of their adaptive capabilities have been neglected. So exactly 1 year ago, we as a scientific group took upon ourselves the task of studying policy changes that affect these animals. We did a forecast for the future, something that we thought we would be criticized. The forecast is this: in the next 5 to 10 years, with the resumption of ecological environment in cities, animals like raccoon dogs would appear in great batches, and we need to take precautions because these presumably wild animals will have conflicts with human beings, and we need to have contingencies. But we were wrong in the first part. We were right in the second part, but the time span has shifted from 5 to 10 years to 5 months. In a warm winter, at a time when we reduce our activities outdoor, the number of raccoon dogs increased by 10 times. We saw raccoon dogs in large tracts of land, and in the last year, odors, pollution, destruction of public areas, and even hurt of human beings have been some of the complaints that people file against these animals. And these previously unknown animals have invaded the city like overnight, creating harassment to human beings. So what exactly happened to this species? It's actually quite good, because a looming challenge has been materialized ahead of our schedule. Animals represented by raccoon dogs have let us realize that the management of biodiversity in an urban setting has become pretty pressing, because in cities like Berlin, animals destroy or even hurt human beings, destroy lands and environments. And for example, in America, millions of deers create damage to urban environments. And in Nanjing and Hangzhou, we've seen wild boars, and in the city of Wuhan, we also see other kinds of wild animals, and we see different kinds of animals that have to adapt to an urban setting because of damage to their habitats. So we need to use new approaches to judge and to estimate the changes happening to them. There are many tasks taking place, like in London and Bristol in the UK. More than 20 red foxes in every square kilometre has taken root to create damage. If we take anatomy, statistics, and digital technology, and if we combine genealogy and biology together, and we may find that the natural adaptation process that could have taken place for decades or even tens of thousands of years, the time window has decreased to a short span of years. The animals like raccoon dogs are less aggressive, they are becoming smaller, and they are a sort of obscure and ambiguous species between wild and domesticated. And we see such locations, dots on the maps, as the basis of mapping wild animals in cities. However, we are now using newer statistical methods to simulate roads and road networks in the cities, and simulate how raccoon dogs pass Hongqiao Airport to different suburban areas in Shanghai, to all lands in Shanghai. And this simulated process, will serve as a precaution to us all. Raccoon dogs will be centered around human activities and do random and arbitrary explorations. And such arbitrariness will be the guideline for us to plan for new greenlands and parks and gardens in the cities. We are conducting other sorts of explorations, but in it, issues are technological findings do not solve urban management issues. We can publish reports and data about raccoon dogs, but how to manage raccoon dogs is a different story. So I'll spend the last 2 minutes to talk about a project or an initiative called citizen scientists, civil scientists. In the past, we took a top-down approach in wild animal management, but now in Shanghai, over 200 citizens have become civil scientists that help us research and study wild animals in interested areas. Amongst such cause, they become scientific groups that live among us, that live in every community. And this urban database that they will contribute into will also be used by and participated by research institutions and government authorities. And it went beyond our expectations that different authorities, different institutions gave their own data. And biodiversity database has new additions from the perspective of aesthetics, public management, so on and so forth. And Fudan University has become an administrator of such a database, not just a contributor. And the public gives us new aspects of understanding. And these new understandings combined with our research outcomes and their contributions form into best practices in suburban areas where wild animals appear by batches. So we see huge changes to urban biodiversity, and with the use of new technologies, we are revealing mysteries that we previously failed to understand for wild animals in an urban setting. And we are addressing challenges that interest all by the intrusion of these wild animals. And the management of wild animals and the policy decision-making process are combined in a much more advanced way than before. So I've used this case to try to illustrate that biodiversity is not a goal that we create. It is the nature of the world that we live in. Thank you.